You either learn it the easy way or you learn it the hard way. Chances are you've already heard of this saying, which is quite common. And the reason why I've mentioned it is because today we're gonna discuss about the importance of learning from our mistakes so that we can move forward. And so pretty much this saying means that you can either learn something the easy way, which is from learning it from someone else. So for example, watching educational videos such as these, or reading educational books, you'll learn stuff the easy way. Or at least if you actually learn it, if you don't forget it, you'll learn it the easy way. While learning it the hard way is making a mistake which will have immediate negative effects on you. But from those mistakes, you'll learn what you did wrong, and from that you can move forward. And that's learning it the hard way, because obviously you had to suffer from the negative consequences of the mistakes that you made. And so, despite the fact that learning it the easy way requires way less effort, all you need to do is put on YouTube and watch a video like this. We can't deny the fact that when learning something from a mistake, it gets embedded more into our brain. We will remember it more. Our subconscious will try and avoid making the same mistakes, knowing the consequences that are to come. Well, when watching a video like this, no offense, but chances are you won't take action. Or maybe you'll slightly remember what I said in this video when there is some sort of occasion to actually take action. I don't know if I've explained myself sufficiently. For example, let's say you watch the video about, let's say the video I made about school from like 2 months ago, which was like a full 30-minute guide. Chances are, if you didn't take action immediately on the different tips I gave, you probably would have forgotten everything that I said in that video. When instead, if you actually took action immediately, if you felt like you needed to take action immediately, you'll remember the stuff for much longer. Well, for example, you watch the video once and it's like during the summertime, so you don't need any of the tips. And then school starts, you won't fully remember those tips, so you'll have to like rewatch the video. Well, when you learn something from your mistakes, it's like you'll forever remember to not do something that way. And for the rest of your life, you'll act in a different way, unless maybe you consciously don't realize that you're acting in the same way. If you maybe naturally tend to act in a certain way, for example, let's say you're a criminal, and you steal stuff. If you get arrested once, chances are you probably won't try and do it again. But if you tend to be someone who doesn't really care and who continues stealing, or who maybe doesn't care too much about the consequences, who doesn't really mind prison, you're obviously going to tend to do it more. While if you hate prison, you obviously won't, you'll avoid doing it for the rest of your life. The reason I name dropped Hamza in the title is because Hamza, out of all people, is someone who we've seen learn a lot from his mistakes. I believe he was criticized a lot during, let's say, February, March period because of some of the stuff he was saying in videos which were quite controversial regarding maybe relationships, because what he was saying about like relationships and mistakes and stuff he did in relationships sounded kind of like extreme. And then later on, he would make videos explaining that some of the stuff he thought ended up being wrong and that he had in fact learned from his mistakes. And many people criticize him for the fact that when teaching something, everyone who follows him naturally does the same thing, follows his same path, but then he realizes that he's made a mistake and he goes a completely different direction, and his loyal subscribers follow him in this completely different direction, but they feel annoyed at the fact that the path they're going on is never a straight path. They're constantly following a different route, considering that Hamza's constantly changing his mind. And although you can see the point they're making, you can't deny that it's natural for us to actually make mistakes, and that it's the best way for us to improve and achieve our goals, like we've seen with Hamza. And so the same thing can be said for me. I can make a video today about learning from your mistakes, and then in 1 month I'll make a video saying that this is complete garbage, and I can do the same for pretty much any video in my YouTube channel. It's normal for us to make mistakes, and the ones who seem to be the most successful, they're the ones who've made the most mistakes, and that's why they've managed to climb so up climbs they managed to climb so high in the path of success. It's because they've learned to move forward from these temporary delays. So let's talk about school, for example. A lot of you have problems at school, and I gotta say that one of the best pieces of advice for people who are struggling at school is to actually learn from your mistakes. Same thing. And I'll tell you a story about this. So it's a story I've told at least once already in my channel, but if you've never heard it before, I'll repeat it. And the story is, I'm gonna make it quite quick. It's actually a long, very long story, and it's pretty much that 2 years ago, I had a science test, and this science test was really easy, and so I kind of took it for granted. And the day before the test, instead of studying like I should have, I was procrastinating and watching TikTok, and like at that time I even like used to make like funny TikTok videos, so because they gave me kind of like validation, because some of my classmates would find it funny, and so even some people like that generally didn't like enjoy talking to me would find it funny, so I'd enjoy making these videos for like validation. And so instead of studying, I was making these little videos and watching TikTok, and I only started studying at like 9 in the evening, and like I read it once and thought took it so much for granted. I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll like revise it the very next day. And so it was the very next day. The test was that day. And before the test, there was like a 15-minute break to like eat. And in that 15-minute break, that's when I started to actually like properly study. And so I studied. The test came. I did the test, and sorry for that, but there was like, I've kind of like reached my maximum amount of like video time for my phone, so it stopped the recording because I'd reached my limit. So I had to like delete some videos that I didn't really need. But yeah, I'm sorry for the interruption. Let's continue. So I finished the test and realized that everything that I had studied 15 minutes earlier, I'd all forgotten. And the very next day came. The very next day, but it was probably more like a week later. The test came marked, and the teacher gave me the test, and I had gotten a 3, which is the lowest mark I've ever gotten in my life. A 3 out of 10. I don't know what it corresponds in like English metric or American metric, but yeah, it's a mark which I like cried that day for how low the mark was. And it was like the first time that I had cried since I was 8. And looking back at it was quite funny. And I kind of deserved it, and I did deserve it, because if it wasn't for that test, I probably wouldn't be as good at school as I am now, because I learned the big lesson to never procrastinate studying, and to never study not only the same day but also like the night before, and to like start studying from like already way before the test is due, and leave the day before for revision. And this year for science, 90% of my marks have been like a 9, which is numerically 3 times the amount that I got in that test. And it would have never been that way if it wasn't that 3 that I got. And even the teacher said that to me a couple of times. So I know that a lot of you struggle in school, so I hope that that helped you understand the importance of making mistakes to move forward. So what I'll tell you to do here is something that I talked about in my David Goggins guide, and it was pretty much to analyze the failures, your recent academic failures, and understand what went wrong so that you can correct those elements, and so that you can move forward and reach heights that you've never imagined were possible. So for example, your latest test where you got, I don't know, let's say a C, and the C is a quite low mark from what I understood. First of all, you look at like the stuff that you did well, so you can try and maybe work on that more. So be like overly generous to try and see what you did well, even if it comes to just saying that the name was written well when you wrote your name and the date, or that you like generally made the test fairly neat. You weren't like very like messy, like a load of people, including myself, are. But then you also have to be extremely strict with yourself to try and find every single mistake you've made. And some can be like really minor, and some can be like big mistakes that cost you most of like the marks. And so you just look at them, and from that you try and correct it all, and then if it's possible you reattempt to do that test, or you just study harder for the next test of that same subject. So I hope this video was helpful, and keep a strong mind and stay like a lion. Mwah.